The research station floated quietly in space, spinning slowly around the giant gas planet below. Dr. Lisa Carter pressed her face against the observation window, watching the swirling purple and orange clouds of Kepler 442b. She had been studying this planet for 2 years now, and it still amazed her every single day. "Lisa, come look at this," called Sam Torres from across the lab. The marine biologist was hunched over his microscope, examining samples from the planet's upper atmosphere. "I think we found something really special here." Lisa walked over to Sam's station, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The Meridian 7 research station was not very big, but it was home to 12 scientists from 4 different alien species. Lisa was one of 4 humans on the team. The others were Captain Jake Morrison, who ran the station, Sam Torres, and Katie Bell, their engineer. The non-human crew members always fascinated Lisa. There were 3 Zephyrians who looked like walking crystals with arms and legs. Their leader was Crixtal, who spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. The 2 Karathi breathed methane instead of oxygen and had to wear special suits around the humans. Then there were 3 Verdani, who looked like walking trees and barely spoke at all. "What did you find?" Lisa asked, peering into Sam's microscope. "Look at these microorganisms," Sam said excitedly. "They're unlike anything we've seen before. They seem to feed on the planet's magnetic field." Lisa looked through the eyepiece and gasped. Tiny creatures were swimming around in the sample, glowing with a soft blue light. They moved in perfect circles, as if they were dancing. "This could change everything we know about life in gas giants," she whispered. Suddenly, red lights began flashing throughout the station. A loud alarm filled the air, making everyone jump. Lisa had never heard this alarm before, and it made her stomach feel tight with fear. Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom, sounding worried. "All crew to emergency stations. We have unknown ships approaching fast. This is not a drill." Lisa and Sam ran to the main control room, where the other crew members were already gathering. Through the big windows, they could see dark shapes moving against the stars. The ships were huge, much bigger than anything Lisa had ever seen. They looked like giant metal sharks with glowing red eyes. "What are those?" Katie Bell asked, her voice shaking. Crixtal made a sound like breaking glass. In his musical voice, he said, "Those are Havoc ships. They are very bad news." Captain Morrison was working fast at the control panel, trying to send messages to other stations. "Communications are being jammed," he said. "I can only get one emergency channel to work." The alien ships moved closer, and Lisa could see smaller vessels coming out of them. These looked like metal insects swarming toward the research station. "Captain, what do we do?" Sam asked. Morrison kept working at his controls. "I'm sending a distress signal to Earth. It's our only chance." His fingers flew over the keyboard as he typed in special codes. "There," he said. "The signal is away." The first Havoc ship attached itself to their station with a loud crash that shook the whole building. Sparks flew from damaged equipment as the walls groaned and bent. "They're cutting through the hull," Katie said, watching her engineering displays. "We have maybe 2 minutes before they break in." Lisa looked around at her friends and colleagues. The Zephyrians were making high-pitched sounds of fear. The Karathi were checking their breathing equipment. The Verdani stood perfectly still, like real trees in a storm. "Everyone stay calm," Captain Morrison said, but his voice showed he was scared too. "Maybe they just want our research data." Crixtal made that glass-breaking sound again. "No, Captain. The Havoc do not take prisoners from other species. They only keep humans alive, and only sometimes." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the station shook again. This time a whole section of the wall blew inward. Hot air rushed out into space, and emergency doors slammed shut to keep the rest of the station safe. Through the smoke and sparks, figures in dark armor began climbing into the station. They were tall and had long arms and legs. Their faces were hidden behind masks that looked like skulls. These were the Havoc warriors Lisa had heard about in stories, but seeing them in real life was much more terrifying. The Havoc moved fast and without mercy. They shot the Zephyrians first, and Lisa watched in horror as Crixtal's crystal body shattered into 1,000 pieces. His last words were, Tell them about the old warnings about humans." The Karathi tried to run, but the Havoc caught them easily. The Verdani did not even try to escape. They stood still as the warriors destroyed them with weapons that turned living things to ash. Lisa grabbed Sam's hand as the Havoc surrounded the remaining humans. Up close, she could see their red eyes glowing behind their skull masks. They smelled like metal and something else she couldn't identify. One of the Havoc, bigger than the others, stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough. "Humans, you will come with us. You will work for us now." "Why?" Captain Morrison asked. "Why kill the others but keep us?" The big Havoc warrior laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Other species are weak. Humans are useful. You will help us. Find more human worlds to conquer." As the Havoc pushed them toward their ships, Lisa heard one of the warriors talking to the big one in their own language. She caught a few words because she had studied alien languages. They were talking about Earth and how easy it would be to conquer. The last thing Lisa saw before being shoved into a dark prison cell was the broken pieces of Krikstal scattered across the floor. His crystalline body caught the light from the emergency systems, creating tiny rainbows in the darkness. Far away, in a secret station hidden near Pluto, Admiral Paul Hayes received Captain Morrison's distress signal. As he read the coded message, his face went white as paper. He reached for a special phone that only 7 people in all of human space were allowed to use. "This is Admiral Hayes," he said when the phone was answered. "We have a Protocol Omega Black situation. Yes, I'm sure. The Havoc have taken humans hostage." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a woman's voice said, "Understood, Admiral. Project Lazarus is authorized. God help us all." Admiral Hayes hung up the phone and stared out at the stars. He had hoped this day would never come, but the Havoc had made a terrible mistake. They had hurt humans, and now they would learn why. The older species in the galaxy whispered warnings about what humans could become when pushed too far. Admiral Paul Hayes sat in his dark office, staring at the computer screen. The distress signal from Meridian 7 had arrived 30 minutes ago, and he still could not believe what he was reading. The Havoc had taken humans hostage. This was the one thing that could never be allowed to happen. He picked up his secure phone and dialed a number that most people did not even know existed. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Station Erebus, Director Price speaking. Amanda, this is Paul. We have a situation." His voice was quiet and serious. "The Havoc have attacked a research station. They killed the alien crew members and took 4 humans prisoner." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Amanda Price said, "Are you absolutely sure about this, Paul?" "Yes." Captain Morrison sent the signal himself before they took him. Admiral Hayes rubbed his tired eyes. "You know what this means?" "Protocol Omega Black," Amanda said. Her voice sounded sick. "I was hoping we would never have to use it." "So was I. But the choice has been made for us." Paul looked out his window at the distant stars. "How long will it take to wake him up?" 12 hours minimum. Maybe less if we push the systems." Amanda paused. "Paul, are we really going to do this? Are we really going to let that thing loose?" "Admiral." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the 4 humans trapped on Havoc ships probably being tortured right now. He thought about the Havoc fleet that would soon attack more human colonies. He thought about all the innocent people who would die if nothing was done. "Yes," he said finally. "Send the activation codes. Wake up Subject 01. Far from Earth, hidden in the shadow of Pluto where no one could see it, Station Erebus began to come alive. The facility was small and looked ordinary from the outside, but inside it held humanity's darkest secret. Director Amanda Price walked through the empty hallways, her footsteps echoing off the metal walls. She had worked here for 15 years, but she still felt afraid every time she came to this place. The scientists who worked here never talked about their jobs with their families. They never talked about their jobs with each other either. She stopped at a heavy door marked with warning signs in 12 different languages. Her hand shook slightly as she entered her access codes. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a laboratory that looked more like a tomb. Dr. Kevin Nash was already waiting for her inside. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been the head scientist on Project Lazarus for 8 years, and the work had aged him badly. "Is it really happening?" he asked Amanda. "Yes. The Havoc have crossed the line." She handed him a data pad with the authorization codes. "How is he?" Dr. Nash looked at the large cylinder in the center of the room. It was made of special metal that could stop almost any weapon, and inside it, something that looked human was sleeping. "All his vital signs are normal, but Kevin, you know what happened the last time we woke him up?" Amanda nodded. She remembered the reports from 5 years ago when they had tested Subject 01 on a small pirate base. The pirates had taken human prisoners from a cargo ship. Within 6 hours of being released, Subject 01 had killed every single pirate on the base. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was how he had killed them. "This time is different," she said. "This time we really need him." Dr. Nash walked to a control panel and began entering the wake-up sequence. Red lights started flashing around the cylinder, and warning messages appeared on every screen in the room. A computer voice began speaking. "Warning. Subject 01. Wake sequence initiated. All personnel maintain safe distance. Security protocols active." Inside the cylinder, the sleeping figure began to move. His eyes opened slowly, and even through the thick metal walls, Amanda could feel something cold and dangerous looking back at her. The process took 2 hours. Amanda and Dr. Nash watched from behind protective barriers as machines checked the subject's health and mental state. Finally, the cylinder opened with a loud hiss of escaping air. Subject 01 sat up slowly and looked around the room. He appeared to be a normal human man, about 30 years old, with brown hair and ordinary features. But Amanda knew that looks could be very deceiving. "Hello, Ryan," Dr. Nash said through the intercom system. "How are you feeling?" The man called Ryan Clark stretched his arms and smiled. When he smiled, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "I feel wonderful, Doctor. It has been too long since you let me out to play." "We have a mission for you," Amanda said, stepping closer to the barrier. "The Havoc have taken human prisoners." Ryan's smile grew wider, showing too many teeth. "The Havoc. I have read about them in the files. They think they are great warriors." He laughed, and the sound made both scientists step backward. "They have no idea what a real warrior looks like." Dr. Nash brought up images of the Havoc fleet on the main screen. "They have over 50 ships and thousands of fighters. Their technology is advanced, and they have experience conquering other species." Ryan studied the images with interest. 50 ships, thousands of fighters. He nodded, slowly. "That should be enough to send a proper message to the galaxy." "What do you need?" Amanda asked. "Very little," Ryan said, standing up. He was tall and moved like a predator. "Just a small stealth ship and basic supplies. No weapons." Dr. Nash looked confused. "No weapons? Ryan, you are going up against an entire fleet." Ryan's smile became something that would give children nightmares. "Doctor, I am the weapon. Everything else is just tools." As the medical teams cleared Ryan for active duty, Amanda pulled up his file on her personal computer. She read through the reports from his creation, trying not to think too hard about what they had done. Project Lazarus had been started after humanity's first contact with hostile aliens 50 years ago. While other species developed better technology, humans had chosen a different path. They had decided to develop better humans. Ryan Clark was the result of decades of genetic engineering, psychological conditioning, and surgical enhancement. Every instinct for violence that civilization had taught humans to control had been enhanced in him. Every capacity for cruelty, every ability to cause fear, every talent for warfare had been refined and perfected. But the most terrifying thing about Ryan was not his enhanced abilities. The most terrifying thing was that deep down he was still completely human. The darkness inside him was not alien or artificial. It was the same darkness that lived in every human being, just freed from all the rules and limits that kept normal people civilized. As Ryan prepared for his mission, Amanda watched him through the security cameras. He moved with calm confidence, checking his equipment and reviewing files about his targets. He looked like any normal person getting ready for work. But Amanda knew better. She knew that they were about to unleash something on the galaxy that would change how every alien species looked at humanity forever. The Havoc thought they were fighting humans. Soon they would learn that sometimes humans could become something much worse than any alien monster. The last entry in Ryan's file was a note from the project's original director, written years ago. "We have created a weapon that even we are afraid to use. God help us if we ever have to." Amanda closed the file and watched Ryan board his stealth ship. As the Shadow's Edge disappeared into the darkness of space, she whispered, "God help the Havoc." War Chief Grexmoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his warriors strip mine the gas giant's moons. The Havoc fleet had been working for 3 days now, taking metals and rare gases from the Kepler 442 system. Everything was going exactly as planned. "Any word from the human homeworld?" he asked his communications officer. "Nothing, War Chief. Complete silence from the Sol system." The officer looked pleased. "It appears the humans have accepted their fate." Grexmoth laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Of course they have. Humans are just another weak species. They will surrender their colonies to save a few prisoners. In the prison section of the flagship, Dr. Lisa Carter sat in her small cell with Sam Torres and Katie Bell. Captain Morrison was in a different cell, badly hurt from the Havoc interrogations. They had been asking him about human military bases and defense systems. "How long do you think before Earth responds?" Sam whispered. Lisa shook her head. "I don't know." The Havoc seemed confident that no help is coming. Katie was looking through the small window in their cell door. "They've got hundreds of ships out there. Even if Earth sends the entire fleet, I don't see how they could win." Through the walls, they could hear Havoc warriors talking and laughing. The aliens were celebrating their easy victory, boasting about how many human worlds they would conquer next. Some were already planning how they would divide up the slaves. "Listen to them," Sam said bitterly. "They think this is already over." But far away from the Havoc fleet, something small and dark was moving through space. The Shadow's Edge was invisible to most sensors, its special hull absorbing radar and light. Inside the tiny ship, Ryan Clark studied the enemy formation on his screens. The Havoc fleet was arranged in a standard pattern, with the largest ships in the center and smaller vessels forming protective rings around them. Ryan counted 57 ships total, from massive dreadnoughts down to single fighter scouts. "Impressive," he said to himself, but his smile suggested he was not impressed at all. They really think numbers matter. Ryan did not see an enemy fleet when he looked at those ships. He saw a puzzle to be solved piece by piece. Each ship was full of living beings with fears, weaknesses, and breaking points. All he had to do was find the right pressure to apply. His first target was a small escort ship called the Bone Render. It was on the outer edge of the formation, with only 26 crew members. Ryan approached it slowly, using the ship's own shadow to hide his approach. The Shadow's Edge attached to the Bone Render's hull like a parasite, using magnetic clamps to hold on tight. Ryan put on a simple spacesuit and cut through the enemy ship's outer wall with a small laser tool. The hole was tiny, just big enough for one person to crawl through. Inside the Bone Render, the Havoc crew went about their normal duties. They were confident and relaxed, having no idea that death had just climbed aboard their ship. The corridors were dimly lit, and Ryan moved through them like a ghost. His first victim was a young Havoc warrior named Keshvar, who was walking alone to the ship's engine room. Ryan appeared behind him without making a sound. Keshvar died so quickly that he never had time to scream or call for help. But Ryan did not just kill the warrior. He arranged the body in a specific way, positioning the arms and legs to form symbols that were sacred to Havoc religion. To any Havoc who found the body, it would look like their gods had punished Keshvar for some terrible sin. The second victim was found 20 minutes later by another crew member. This warrior, Zekmoth, discovered his friend's body and immediately knew something was very wrong. He reached for his communicator to alert the bridge, but Ryan was already behind him. Zekmoth lived longer than the first victim, long enough to see Ryan's face and understand that something impossible was happening. long enough to realize that the stories about humans were all wrong. Then he died too, and his body joined the first in the same religious arrangement. By the time the Bonerender's captain realized his crew members were missing, 8 of them were already dead. Captain Vexcar sent search teams through the ship, but they found only bodies arranged in patterns that made no sense. The search teams began to feel afraid. Havoc warriors were trained from birth to fear nothing, but this was different. Someone was on their ship. Someone who could move unseen and kill without sound. Someone who understood their culture well enough to turn their deaths into religious mockery. Bridge to all sections, Captain Vexcar announced over the ship's intercom. "We have an intruder aboard. All crew members report to battle stations, immediately." But Ryan was already in the ship's communication system. He had spent hours learning about Havoc technology from captured databases, and their computers were surprisingly easy to hack. As the captain made his announcement, Ryan was recording it and preparing his own response. 5 minutes later, every speaker on the Bonerender began playing a message in perfect Havoc language. "Your gods have abandoned you. Your ancestors are ashamed of you. Your children will forget your names. This is only the beginning." The voice speaking these words sounded like Captain Vexcar himself. Ryan had used computer software to copy the captain's voice patterns perfectly. To the remaining crew, it sounded like their own leader was pronouncing their doom. Panic spread through the ship faster than fire. Havoc warriors began shooting at shadows, convinced that their captain had gone insane or been possessed by evil spirits. Some tried to escape in the ship's small shuttles but found that all the launch bays had been sealed shut. In the chaos, Ryan continued his work. One by one, the remaining crew members disappeared. Some were found dead in impossible places like sealed storage rooms or inside the ship's computer core. Others simply vanished completely, leaving only bloodstains and personal belongings arranged in threatening patterns. Within 6 hours, the Bonerender was completely silent. When the ship failed to respond to communications from the fleet, War Chief Grexmoth assumed it was a technical problem. He sent 2 more ships to investigate. The first ship to reach the Bonerender was the Claw Strike, a mid-sized cruiser with a crew of 90. Captain Drexnoth led a boarding party onto the silent vessel, expecting to find broken engines or damaged communications equipment. Instead, they found a ship of the dead. Bodies were arranged throughout the corridors in patterns that told a story of fear and madness. The bridge crew were found at their posts, but their eyes had been removed and placed in small piles near religious shrines. Personal messages were written on the walls in Havoc blood, each one referencing the deepest fears of their warrior culture. "What could have done this?" one of the boarding party whispered. Captain Drexnoth had no answer. In 40 years of warfare, he had never seen anything like this. "Search every room," he ordered. "Find out what happened here." But as his crew spread out through the Bonerender, Ryan was already aboard the Claw Strike. He had used the confusion of the boarding operation to slip from one ship to the other, moving like smoke through the connecting airlocks. The second ship would fall even faster than the first. Ryan had learned from his initial attack, refining his methods. This time, he did not just kill the crew. He turned them against each other first, using their own fears and superstitions as weapons. By the end of the day, 2 Havoc ships drifted silent in space, their crews dead and their hulls intact. On the bridge of his flagship, War Chief Grexmoth stared at the sensor readings and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "the 3rd scout ship is requesting permission to return to the fleet." "Denied," Grexmoth growled. "We do not retreat from ghosts and shadows." But deep in his heart, the war chief was beginning to understand that they were not fighting ghosts. They were fighting something much worse, something that used to be human, but had become something else entirely, something that was just getting started. War Chief Grexmoth stood before the massive view screen on his flagship, watching his fleet fall apart. In 3 days, 7 ships had gone silent. Each time he sent vessels to investigate, they either disappeared completely or returned with crews driven mad by what they had found. "Report," he demanded from his intelligence officer. "Sir, the pattern makes no sense," the officer replied, his voice shaking. "The attacker does not target our most important ships. Instead, he seems to choose randomly. Supply vessels, scouts, even our medical ships. It is like he is playing some kind of game." Grexmoth's fists clenched. In 50 years of conquest, he had never faced an enemy like this. The Havoc way of war was simple and direct. You found your enemy, you fought them with superior numbers and firepower, and you won. But this enemy could not be found, could not be fought, and seemed to be winning anyway. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving reports from the Skull Crusher. They say something is wrong with their crew." On the screen, the image of Captain Mordeth appeared. The veteran warrior looked terrified, his usually proud face twisted with fear. "War Chief, my warriors are killing each other. They claim they see enemies that are not there. They say the walls are whispering threats in their own voices." "Get control of your ship, Captain," Grexmoth ordered. "I am trying, sir, but—" The transmission suddenly cut to static, then went completely dead. Another ship lost. Another crew destroyed by something that should not exist. Deep in the flagship's prison section, Dr. Lisa Carter pressed her ear to the cell door, trying to understand what the Havoc guards were saying. Their language was harsh and difficult, but she had learned enough to catch key words. They were talking about death, about fear, about something hunting them through their own ships. "What are they so afraid of?" Sam Torres asked. Lisa pulled back from the door. "I think something is attacking their fleet. The guards keep talking about ships going silent and crews being found dead." Katie Bell looked hopeful for the first time in days. Maybe Earth sent a rescue mission after all. But Lisa was not so sure. The fear in the Havoc voices was too deep, too complete. Whatever was happening to their fleet, it was something beyond normal warfare. Something that made experienced warriors sound like frightened children. In another cell, Captain Morrison was barely conscious from his injuries, but even he could hear the panic spreading through the enemy ship. The Havoc had beaten him to learn about human military secrets, but he had told them nothing. Now he wondered if Earth had secrets even he did not know about. Meanwhile, Ryan Clark moved through the Havoc flagship like a shadow made real. The Devastator was the largest ship in the fleet, with over 3,000 crew members. It should have been impossible for one person to infiltrate such a massive vessel, but Ryan had learned that size could be a weakness as well as a strength. He had been aboard for 2 days now, and his approach here was different from the smaller ships. Instead of killing quickly and quietly, he was taking his time. He wanted the flagship's crew to know he was there. He wanted them to feel the fear building slowly, like water rising in a sinking ship. His first move had been to leave a small device in War Chief Grexmoth's private quarters. It was not a bomb or a weapon, just a simple recording device that played human music at random times during the night. The music was soft and beautiful, completely unlike anything in Havoc culture. To Grexmoth, waking up to strange melodies in his locked room was like finding a poisonous snake in his bed. Next, Ryan had begun leaving messages throughout the ship. Not written messages, but objects arranged in specific patterns. A Havoc warrior's personal weapon would be found disassembled and rebuilt into the shape of a human skull. Family pictures would be turned upside down and marked with symbols that meant death in Havoc writing. The crew began to notice these signs and started talking among themselves. Some claimed the ship was cursed. Others believed enemy agents had infiltrated their ranks. A few suggested that the human prisoners had somehow escaped and were getting revenge, but the most disturbing incidents were yet to come. Ryan had studied Havoc psychology for years through captured databases, and he knew exactly which fears would break them fastest. Havoc culture was built around the idea of honorable death in battle. The worst fate for a Havoc warrior was to die alone, forgotten, and without glory. So Ryan began making Havoc warriors disappear completely. Not just killing them, but erasing all trace that they had ever existed. He would take a warrior from his post, remove his name from duty rosters, delete his personal files, and make sure no one could remember seeing him that day. When other crew members looked for the missing warrior, they would find no record that he had ever been aboard the ship at all. This psychological attack worked better than any weapon. Havoc warriors began to doubt their own memories. They started questioning whether missing crew members had really existed or were just products of their frightened imaginations. Some warriors became convinced that they too might disappear and be forgotten, as if they had never lived at all. The fear spread like a disease through the ship. Guards abandoned their posts to stay in groups, afraid to be alone. Officers stopped giving orders because they were not sure if their subordinates were real or hallucinations. The mighty Devastator, flagship of the conquering Havoc fleet, began to tear itself apart from the inside. War Chief Grexmoth tried to maintain order, but even he was beginning to crack under the pressure. The strange music in his quarters had been joined by other impossible things. His personal belongings would be moved while he slept. Messages written in his own handwriting would appear on his desk, containing information only he should know. The final straw came when Grexmoth found a recording device in his command chair, playing back conversations he had had in complete privacy. The voice on the recording was his own, but he was saying things he had never said, making plans he had never made, giving orders he did not remember. "Bring me the human prisoners," he ordered his guards. "Now." Dr. Carter and her colleagues were dragged to the bridge where they found chaos. Havoc officers were arguing with each other, checking and rechecking sensor readings that made no sense. Some were stationed at weapons that pointed inward at their own fleet, convinced that the threat was coming from other Havoc ships. "What is happening to my fleet?" Grexmoth demanded, grabbing Lisa by the shoulders. "What weapons do your people have?" Lisa looked around at the panicked aliens and honestly answered, "I don't know. Our military has advanced ships and weapons, but nothing that could do this. Nothing that could make an entire fleet afraid of shadows." Captain Morrison, barely able to stand, was brought forward. "Tell me about your secret weapons," Grexmoth ordered. "There are no secret weapons," Morrison replied weakly. "Earth's fleet is strong, but we fight with ships and soldiers, just like everyone else." But even as he spoke, Morrison wondered if that was really true. The fear he saw in these veteran warriors was beyond anything normal warfare could cause. Whatever was hunting the Havoc fleet, it was something that even humans might not fully understand. On the ship's sensor display, another vessel disappeared from the formation. This time it was the Bone Splitter, a heavy cruiser that had been part of the Havoc fleet for over 20 years. One moment it was there, responding normally to communications. The next moment, it was drifting silent and dead. War Chief Grexmoth stared at the display, his proud warrior's composure finally beginning to crack. In his deepest heart, he was starting to understand a terrible truth. The humans had not sent a fleet to rescue their people. They had sent something much worse. They had sent a nightmare made real, something that could turn a warrior's own mind against him, something that killed not just the body but the spirit and the hope as well. As if summoned by his thoughts, the lights on the bridge began to flicker. In the brief moments of darkness between the flashes, Grexmoth thought he saw a figure standing in the shadows near the back of the bridge. A figure that looked human, but carried darkness like a cloak. When the light stabilized, the figure was gone. But on the main screen, new words had appeared, written in perfect Havoc script. "I am coming for you, War Chief, and when I am done, no one will remember your name." The end came not with explosions or great battles, but with the slow collapse of everything the Havoc believed about themselves. War Chief Grexmoth stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by officers who jumped at every shadow and guards who pointed, their weapons at empty air. Only 12 ships remained from his once mighty fleet of 57. The others had either gone silent or fled into deep space, their crews driven mad by fear. Those that remained were held together only by Grexmoth's iron will and the hope that they could somehow escape this nightmare. "Sir," his communications officer whispered, "the remaining captains are requesting permission to retreat." "No," Grexmoth growled. "We are Havoc. We do not run from shadows and tricks." But even as he spoke, he could feel his own confidence cracking. The human prisoners on his bridge seemed just as confused as his own crew. If they had some secret weapon, they clearly did not know about it. Which meant the thing hunting his fleet was beyond even human understanding. Dr. Lisa Carter watched the alien warriors with growing amazement. These same Havoc who had coldly murdered her friends were now trembling like children. Whatever was happening to their fleet had broken something fundamental in their warrior culture. "Captain Morrison," she whispered to their injured leader, "do you have any idea what could be doing this?" Morrison shook his head weakly. "Nothing in our military could cause this kind of psychological warfare. This is something else entirely." That was when Ryan Clark finally revealed himself. He appeared on the bridge as if he had materialized from the shadows themselves. One moment the space near the rear wall was empty. The next moment a human man stood there, watching them all with calm, dark eyes. The Havoc guards raised their weapons, but Grexamoth held up a hand to stop them. He wanted to see this enemy who had destroyed his fleet without firing a single shot. "You," the war chief said, his voice filled with rage and fear. "You are the one who has been killing my warriors." Ryan smiled, and the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. "Hello, War Chief. Yes, I am the one your people have been trying so hard to find." "What are you?" Grexmoth demanded. "What kind of weapon are you?" "I am human," Ryan replied simply. "Just human. But I am the kind of human your species should never have provoked." Lisa Carter stared at the man who had appeared on the bridge. He looked completely ordinary, like someone she might pass on the street without a second glance. But there was something in his eyes that made her stomach feel cold and tight. "How?" Grexmoth asked. "How did one being destroy an entire fleet?" Ryan walked closer, and seasoned Havoc warriors stepped backward, despite themselves. "You made a mistake, War Chief. You thought humans were just another weak species to be conquered. You thought we would surrender our people to save ourselves trouble. We have conquered thousands of species," Grexmoth snarled. "Humans are no different." "But we are different," Ryan said, his voice soft and terrible. "Every other species you conquered developed better technology when threatened. Better shields, faster ships, stronger weapons, but humans, we developed something else entirely." He gestured to himself with casual pride. "We developed better humans." Dr. Carter felt sick as understanding began to dawn on her. "What did they do to you?" she whispered. Ryan glanced at her with something that might have been sympathy. "They took everything that makes humans dangerous and removed everything that holds us back. They enhanced our capacity for violence, our ability to cause fear, our talent for psychological warfare. Then they removed our conscience, our empathy, our hesitation to cause suffering." "That is impossible," Grexmoth said, but his voice shook. "Is it?" Ryan asked. "Look around you, War Chief. Look at what remains of your mighty fleet. I am not the only one either. There are others like me, sleeping in secret places, waiting for the day when humanity needs its darkest weapons." He stepped closer to Grexmoth, who despite being larger and stronger found himself backing away. "You killed innocents at the research station. You took human prisoners. You threatened human colonies. Did you really think we would respond with negotiations and treaties?" Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. "This contains the locations of every Havoc military base, every colony world, every place your species calls home. Your own computers gave me this information." "Willingly. What do you want?" Grexmoth asked, his warrior's pride finally broken. "I want you to understand something very important," Ryan said. "Humanity has learned to create weapons that your worst nightmares could not imagine. We have turned our own darkest nature into a tool of war, and we will use these weapons without hesitation if you threaten us again." The confrontation lasted only minutes. Grexmoth tried to fight, drawing his ceremonial sword and calling on decades of warrior training. But Ryan moved like liquid death, avoiding every strike and responding with precise violence that left no room for glory or honor. When it was over, the war chief of the Havoc lay dying on the floor of his own bridge. His last sight was Ryan's calm face looking down at him without anger, without hatred, without any emotion at all. "Your people will remember this day," Ryan told the dying alien. They will tell stories about what happens when you hurt humans, and maybe, if you are lucky, those stories will keep them from making the same mistake again. After Grexmoth died, Ryan turned to the surviving Havoc crew. "You have two choices," he said quietly. "You can return to your home worlds and tell them what happened here, or you can die with your war chief and be forgotten forever." The choice was easy. Within an hour, the remaining Havoc ships were fleeing toward their home territory, carrying news of their defeat and terror of humanity's secret weapons. Ryan freed the human prisoners and arranged for their rescue by a regular Earth fleet. But his interaction with Dr. Carter and her colleagues was carefully limited. They saw enough to know that he was something that had once been human, but they did not see enough to understand exactly what he had become. "The official report will say that classified defense systems destroyed the Havoc fleet," Admiral Hayes told them during their debriefing. "You will never speak of what you actually saw." Dr. Carter wanted to ask questions, but the look in the Admiral's eyes warned her not to. Some secrets were too dangerous to discuss even with the people who had been saved by them. Ryan returned to Station Erebus, where Director Price noted that his psychological evaluations showed no change despite the massacre he had committed. He requested to review files on other hostile alien species, suggesting that the Havoc were merely his first assignment. Within weeks, word began to spread through the galaxy's criminal networks. The Havoc, who had terrorized hundreds of worlds, had been completely destroyed by a single human. Pirates who had been planning raids on human colonies quietly changed their targets. Slavers who had been capturing human civilians found other species to hunt. The older alien civilizations, who had been watching humanity's expansion with mild interest, suddenly began paying much closer attention. They had seen species develop better technology before, but humanity had done something different. They had developed better monsters. In the deepest files of alien intelligence agencies, new reports began to appear. Reports that whispered about humanity's true nature, about what they were willing to become when threatened. Reports that recommended treating humans not as another young species to be managed, but as something far more dangerous. The final entry in Ryan's mission report was simple. Objective completed. Havoc threat eliminated. Psychological warfare parameters exceeded expectations. Ready for next assignment. But the real message had been sent to the galaxy itself. Humanity had shown that when pushed to the edge, they would not just fight back. They would create weapons that even they feared to use. Weapons that could turn the darkness of human nature into a tool of absolute terror. The distress signal from Meridian 7 had asked for help. What arrived was proof that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is what happens when humans decide to stop pretending to be civilized.